evening. Welcome to Town Administrator's Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator Steve Maio. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Welcome.
We're back from our summer break.
Well, we're still in there, just based on our attire, right?
But yes, we're still enjoying summer. And summer-wise, it's been kind of an odd year.
Extremely odd. Here it is, we're filming this on August 17th. I think it's
Yep.
August 17th, and
Yep.
it's 60 degrees outside and a little windy, but still no rain, which we need desperately.
Right.
But I would say we're in the dog days of August, but nope, that's already passed. So, yeah, wrapping up, getting ready for school opening and other things, so.
Yes, the kids are on the downhill slide towards school reopening.
Absolutely.
So, but what we are going to talk about is going to be possibly something in the future for people to enjoy in the summer, and that is the rail trail.
The rail trail, we've been talking about this for a long time. We're getting closer.
We've been talking about this now for 10 years,
Yeah.
since 2012, and a small portion of it has been done
Yes.
from the beginning in front of the across from the Galvin School to Water Street.
Actually, to Salem.
All the way to
All the way
Salem
to Salem
Street.
Street, actually. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, but there's still quite a ways to go. And it's going to be 4.4 miles long.
Correct?
It's going to follow the old Newbury rail route, Newburyport rail route.
Correct?
And, but according to the state, work is not going to begin until 2026. What's up with that?
Right. Well, that's actually not that far away. when
Four more
when you look at
years.
state funding. Well, actually, it's 3 when you look at the fiscal years. But
Yeah.
let's talk about what is done.
Yeah.
Okay. So approximately a mile of the rail trail has been, I'm not going to say completed, it has been paved, but there are screenings and street crossings, and the trailhead needs to be done, things like that. But a mile between the Galvin, as you mentioned, and going to Salem Street was done in conjunction with National Grid. So National Grid brought their infamous power line that they're still working on in a couple of locations through the town. We negotiated with them to bring it down the rail trail, so we didn't have to go through another street, frankly. It was easier on them to a certain extent. And so that is that mile, roughly a mile, from the, I almost said the high school, the old high school, from the Galvin to Salem Street.
Right.
And so then we have another, mile and a half or so to go to the Linfield line. So that area is exciting. So for that area, and I think I know there are people that are using it, although they technically shouldn't be, but I'm sure people are walking it and biking it. If I were a young kid, don't do this because I'm saying it. It's a different world now, but I'm sure that I would have if I were a young kid. So in going through the overall permitting for the entire 4.5 miles, there's a lot that needs to be done from an environmental standpoint, from an endangered species standpoint. And what's both sad and exciting is that you have to go through all that. But what is exciting is that area of Reedy Meadow, which for those of you at home that kind of don't know where that is, think of the marsh area in front of the Sheridan. Think of that area there, where it's very wet, very marshy, kind of going towards Audubon Road in that area. That area is going to be spectacular to ride through from a foliage standpoint, from a animal standpoint, from seeing birds and what have you, and another life there. That's going to take, and it's being worked on. We're doing borings for the state and looking at soil samples, and it's going to take a lot of permitting, from endangered species to, the actual, traditional conservation measures you think about. So that's going to take a while. And we know that. And that is going along. But we do have this, mile plus area that we'd like to use a little bit earlier than that. So we were able to obtain this August a grant of $160,000 from the Mass Trails Grant Association, for lack of a better term, but through and, Mass DOT, where we're going to actually construct the trailheads at Richardson Street and do the crossings at Richardson Water, New Salem, and Fitch Court. So that is really going to kind of create the ability to use a portion of this rail trail while we're waiting to go on through the rest of
Right.
it and get the permitting.
Right.
And in fact, the remaining 1 mile, which would be from Salem Street to the Linfield line, we'd like to do as much as we can that's not in the environmentally sensitive area, or as sensitive, I should say, as quick as we can. So we're going to try to expand that through other grants and through other items, other avenues, to kind of do as far as we can, because we do know when we get to the Linfield line, that area is going to be elevated. It's going to be kind of on a boardwalk type of thing to think about it. So that's going to take a little bit longer. But what is really going to be outstanding is that when this is completed, this is going to be a 30-mile long trail that's going to go from Wakefield, Linfield, Peabody has a section to complete. When that's done, you're going to go all the way up through Essex County,
Right.
to Newburyport. It's going to be
Right.
unbelievable, spectacular. So it is worth the wait. There were lots of fits and starts in this. We've been talking about it for a while, but really didn't really get really moving until 2 or 3 years ago. So
Yeah, it really is, and there are some nice rail trails in the eastern
Very nice.
Massachusetts area. So this is something really to look forward to. So the section that's going to be worked on next, will take it from Salem Street to Lowell Street? Or will
yeah,
it
from
take it?
Salem to Lowell, and then from Lowell to as far as we can really go without really getting into the environmental work.
Right.
See, the other thing is that when you work with Mass DOT, they really would prefer that a trail doesn't end in an area that's inaccessible. So if you were to end, near the underpass going on Route 128 there on the Linfield line, it's kind of that's inaccessible,
Yeah,
right? So we
it's-
might want to come back to where there is a main
Right.
thoroughfare before they
Right.
do the rest of it. So I gotta, there's lots of permitting, and COVID certainly didn't help. The state agencies were not as active, and nobody was, right? Nobody was,
Right.
So it is taking longer than any of us would have wanted, but for the transportation improvement plan of 2026, we may be able to move that down to 25 or 24. We're getting very close. We're getting very close. We're in the game. Let's put it that way.
Well, the nice thing is, finally, because of the work that's been done at the beginning of it, people can see what's going
Yeah.
to be there.
Right.
And see that there's something that is actually happening. But the other thing is, there are notes of paved parking areas, safety improvements you've talked about, landscape enhancement, privacy features. Are these privacy features for the abutting residences?
Exactly.
Because this is going to be going through backyards.
Yes,
or going
it is
by backyards.
backyards, yeah. And I think that, as a kid, growing up in Wakefield, there used to be, we used to play hockey back there, right, and skate, because there were little pockets of
Yeah.
of ice,
Yeah.
when the rail trail. So what's lucky on the Wakefield side, or luckier, is that most of the backyards are either fenced, or there's a clear delineation where the line goes through. Gets a little bit nebulous as you get towards the Peabody line, where it's been a little bit more encroached upon, let's say, which is an issue that happens in every rail trail wherever you go,
Right.
these abandoned rail lines. So yes, so part of it is privacy, part of it is parking. We don't want to have parking issues in people's neighborhoods.
Right.
So having a trailhead parking area across from the Galvin not only helps the Galvin for, things when there's town meeting and
Right.
events there, but it also makes sure that people aren't crowding the areas. And we would hope that most people would ride there anyway, right? And hopefully they're not going to be taking the car, but some will.
And also, the other thing about the rail trail is it will help enhance a subject we talked about a couple of months ago that happened around the lake in July, and that's the Safe Streets Wakefield program.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, it is for anybody that's been on a rail trail, that's taken their family, taken their young children, their grandchildren, it is so much more enjoyable and so much safer and so much less stressful to have that, 12-foot paved path.
Right.
Sometimes it'll narrow 10 depending on the topography, what have you. But to have that area that is, for, bikers and walkers, it's just no vehicles.
Right.
So no motorized vehicles. So it's just much better.
Well, and plus it's the full width of the original rail right-of-way that
Exactly.
existed.
Right.
Even after the trains were
Right.
pulled from service.
And actually, it's not, I think that what's interesting when you talk about the rail right-of-way, Wakefield will not own that right-of-way.
Right.
The railroad will still own it. We will have a lease for 99 years to use the right-of-way,
Right.
as will everywhere else. So I guess the railroad never gives up complete ownership of things.
Whichever railroad it is,
Whatever
because
railroad it is, yeah.
it's been three
Yeah.
different railroads
Yeah.
that have controlled that
I
right-of-way.
keep calling it MBTA, for lack of a better name.
Well, it is now,
Yeah.
yeah, it is now, but it was the B&M for a long
Right.
time, and before that, it was a railroad that actually initiated that line. From a historical point of view, most people don't realize Wakefield for a long time was a rail hub.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Especially down around the Water Street area.
Yeah, and I can remember in my lifetime in town, I can remember the freight cars going through that line very often
Right.
when I was a kid, so
Well, at one time, the town had 6 railroad stations.
how things have changed.
I know, I know. But I remember when the Greenwood station was literally picked up and trailered through town up to the old Pleasure Island,
Yeah,
as part of that park. So,
interesting.
but, so what else, what other features can people look forward to seeing on this rail trail, especially with that portion that's going to be completed sooner rather than later?
Well, I think that the portion that's going to be continued sooner rather than later, we want to make sure certainly that there are safe crossings, because you're crossing a few major streets. You're crossing Salem, or will be crossing Salem, but you'll definitely be crossing New Salem, and you'll be crossing Water.
Right,
New Salem and Water, pretty hefty traveled
Right.
ways. So you're going to see very safe crossings with signage and indications that people are coming through, that bike
Right.
riders and walkers
will
are
there
coming
be
through.
lights at each of those intersections for
That,
traffic?
there may or may not be lights at each of them, but with some sort of signalization.
Right.
Whether it's, the flashing things or the what have you. There'll be something to make sure that drivers are aware.
Right,
To slow down.
right. Lowell Street as well.
Lowell Street as well,
Yeah,
that'd
yeah.
be phase 2.
Yeah.
That's another area. The other item that you will be seeing is that there will be a nicer trailhead opening across from the Galvin that will have parking, but that will have some niceties and some, plantings and benches and things
Right.
like that. And you will also see a much better parking area on Water Street, kind of near the Omelet headquarters in that area. So
Right.
that'll actually help out with some additional parking all around, or some defined parking, I should say. all
Which
around.
was the center
Yeah,
train
which
station
was the old
for a
train-
long time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Now we'll have bikes instead of trains.
Yep.
And I gotta say, I envision when you go into other communities, you do see like these little businesses popping up that maybe are, catering to some of the
Mm-hmm.
rail trail, whether it's an ice cream store or something like that, or, Wakefield used to have 2 or 3 bike shops
right.
years ago. Now we have none. Maybe that would come back, be a great business to bring back to Wakefield. So
There's a space waiting for one.
there, a couple, anyway. But those are things that we're certainly looking at. We also have to be well aware that, when you cross Fitch Court, okay, we think of, most of the rail trail, other than crossing some of those major thoroughfares, there's really only, you're only crossing on the major roads. Fitch Court, however, there is a business on the other side
Right.
of the, on, you know, on the, I guess it would be the east side of the tracks and the west side of the tracks there. So that has to be carefully done to make sure that that's, you know, accessible and careful for everybody. So there's a lot of, you know, melding that needs to be done
Right.
and what have you, feathering things into existing areas.
I mean, one nice thing is that, you know, in certain places along where the rail trail will be, there are some of those amenities. At the head of the trail, of course, is McDonald's and
Right.
Dunkin' Donuts and that sort of thing. A couple of sub shops. But you get up toward Lowell Street and you have
Four
ice
Corners,
cream
yeah,
there at the Four Corners and a
yeah.
few other things too. So, you know, all good stuff.
It could be some other, you know, business for those,
Yeah,
you know, more businesses for those business, I guess. So.
absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting project. It takes a long time, and they all take a long time. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, yeah. But when the environmental comes in, you know, Reading Meadow,
Yeah,
that was not something that figured in all those years ago when Pleasure Island was built. They just went in and they built it.
yeah, that was a different world.
You know?
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is here that what is interesting to me is that this isn't like a new roadway going through the Reedy Meadow area. This is
Right.
within the railroad right-of-way. There are already tracks.
Right.
You know, this is already being used. So you would think, you know, in going through the process, you would think and hope that it certainly does, you know, to take into account that there was an existing use there. And for the most part, probably entirely through that area, you're looking at a raised platform.
Right.
So the impact should be less. I think you're also going to see in that area, particular of the trail, you know, some of you know, almost like scenic bump outs, where you will be able to, you know, get off and really kind of take a look and take pictures. You're a photographer. I bet you'll get some great pictures out there of some of the wildlife or the foliage or what have you. So that's really exciting.
Yeah,
Really exciting.
yeah. And once the whole project is completed, as you say,
Yep.
somebody, you know, could walk or bike from Wakefield all the way to Newburyport.
All the way to Newburyport, yeah. And then, you know, and then we have to think about going the other way too. Maybe more overland routes, but linking up with the Stoneham bike path that goes through Stoneham, Winchester. So there are these other, you know, links that you're looking at that you can really, you know, the goal of Mass DOT, and I'll tell you, the people that are in this department, the trail department, are passionate about this. And they will doggedly, you know, stick to the plan to get these done. You know, whether it's through a salt marsh or the Reedy Meadow, they're going to figure out a way to marry the environmental concerns with the recreation rail trail concerns, and they are incredibly passionate about it. The head of that division has been out to Wakefield a number of times. He's very,
Sure.
I think he's very personally invested in this project. So the fact that we're able to pick off some pieces of it, because he sees the value of it, is really, it's really a testament to the relationship between our engineering department and Mass DOT.
Right.
And then, you know, going through the funding mechanisms there. It doesn't help to have a relationship in these things. You know, and we tell them we're ready to go. You know, we'll work right away on this, so.
As sections of this project get completed, will there be formal openings?
I think there will be certainly some formal celebratory points, let's put it that way. And I think you can count on that, that happening.
Because that would help kind of jumpstart people knowing it's there and wanting to use it, I think.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that's very interesting about rail trails is that I think that there are, in the beginning of the process, there's a lot of people that love the idea.
Yep,
Okay, love having a rail trail.
yep,
As you go through the public outreach process on it, you have those that love it, okay? And then you have those that are abutters or close to abutters that, you know, like any other project that comes in, are a little bit hesitant.
right,
And then you talk to people that have had rail trails, you know, because we're not the first one, obviously.
right,
And almost to a person, they say that it enhanced the value, enhanced the
Right.
enjoyment, enhanced the neighborhood. So I think that gives me a lot of solstice and a lot of, it makes me really happy to hear that. Because, I've been through a lot of them, whether they're down the Cape or in Newburyport or in Lexington,
Yep.
all those areas.
Lexington has a really
yeah.
nice one that actually goes over the highway at one
Yeah,
point. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
So you know what, they're great, they're great enjoyment.
right.
So I can see that, and we just have to, we'll stay the course, and I would say the people in Wakefield, the abutters have been, naturally some very concerned, but seem to be by and large pretty much very high on this project. We talked about screening and fencing and delineations between the rail trail and people's property.
Yeah.
And at one of the meetings, one of the abutters came up to me and said, Steve, don't worry about me. I don't want any fencing. I want my kids to go right out there and go onto the rail trail without having to worry about it. I said, well, there's got to be something for your own privacy.
Because whoever buys
You
that
say that
property down
today.
the road
You
may
say-
not feel that
You say
way.
that today,
Yeah,
but we're going to take
yeah.
care of you. There's also a lot of other great opportunities along the trail, where there'll be some, places to sit and relax, and
Right.
Whether there'll be areas of some, people talk about public art. Where there's some of those things along the trail. So it does open it up to all these other possibilities and enhancements.
Right.
But let's get it built, and then built, safe, screened, and then let's roll those things in. Would
Sure,
be my,
sure, and
my
there,
advice.
and there are other things, the historical points along that route
Exactly.
too can be pointed out, things like that only enhance the experience of going there, But the bikers and the walkers especially, I think, like they do with around the lake now.
I think the other group, I think that will really enjoy it, are the cross-country skiers. Because
Good point.
we're certainly not going to be plowing the trail.
Right.
But in winters, if you want to cross-country ski, it's going to be, what is it, 2.5 miles in Wakefield?
Yep.
That's a nice little, go back and forth, it's a nice little 5-mile run
Sure.
for you. So, and I can see a lot of that happening, people taking it downtown to go in, from the North Ward to get, to go and buy groceries.
Right.
Or what have you. So I think you're going to see, that's another group that I hadn't thought about that was pointed out to me, so.
Well, and it might bring more people the other way to the downtown,
Exactly.
to go to the restaurants, to go to some of
Yeah.
the shops, and really, help in that respect too.
Yeah, a little shorter walk too. You're going, direct, not weaving through the streets. You can walk down and then shoot off the rail trail to
Yep.
the restaurant, to the store, and then shoot back.
Yep,
Not bad.
yep. And it also might help that corridor on Water Street that's been kind of not as busy
Right.
as it used to be.
Right. And the whole, kids getting to the Galvin from that area. Nice, safe place for them to walk to get there, so.
What a concept,
nice, yeah.
walking to school.
Absolutely. Uphill both ways when we went.
But, well, this is really something that is exciting to look forward to. I think that the townspeople will learn to, or appreciate it once it's there,
I think so.
but it's been a long haul of, well, there's this section over here, but
Right.
nobody can use it right now.
I know.
You
I
know?
And that's why I'm happy that we, brought in some extra grant money, because the other thing is that, I think that maybe the community doesn't know, but when we say we're waiting, we're getting on the list to get this done.
Yep.
That's because this is all called Transportation Improvement Plan, or TIP, get on the TIP list, people say.
Right.
And that's all federal money flowing through the state, so it's not
Right.
town money that's being put in there. So that's why some of the wait is to kind of wait our turn, so to speak.
Well, and yes, and according to the state fact sheet, we're looking at the federal piece of it being $11,036,317,
Yeah.
which is not an insignificant amount of money.
Absolutely not, And a lot of that is because of the, the raised trail.
Yeah, yeah. But that's the advantage of rail beds anyway, because by design, they were raised,
Yes,
from the beginning, so it's just enhancing what's already there.
yeah. It'll be a little bit more enhanced than we thought, but that's fine.
Well, but that's better for
We're
the
gonna have a
safety
show and show
factor,
all your
yeah,
great pictures in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, that might be another thing, is to get some of the local artists and photographers to do a group show
Yeah.
of what they see along the rail trail.
And I don't think not even just the photography, but painting. I think those will be some
Well, that's why I said
spectacular
artists too,
paintings,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have quite a
Quite a
crowd of
talented crew.
those
Yeah.
here too. Wakefield
It'll be
is-
fun. We'll be looking forward to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have only a couple of minutes left, but any other little bits of news to impart, since it has been a couple of months since the last show?
I guess the other big project in town that's on the horizon is the high school.
Yep.
The high school is continuing to do its high school feasibility design projects, continuing to move forward, really looking at very closely how the high school, the proposed high school is going to be heated and cooled. And really looking at the basic elimination of fossil fuels and really having a, very, very minor or zero footprint on it, with a combination of solar, electric, and geothermal. So it really is very exciting and interesting to kind of, because I don't know, I'm not an engineer.
Right.
So listening to those, some of the meetings on that is very interesting and very educating.
Some of the developments in geothermal in particular in the last
Yeah.
40 years have been just amazing.
Right, and thinking about the backup, how you're gonna back up the building, with electricity.
Yeah.
If that something happens that you need it, how does that affect the overall grid in the area?
Right.
So there's a lot of those things tying together that are very interesting, and we hope to present the high school project in there'll be forums in the fall and what have you, but in a very formal sense, probably sometime in January to the town meeting. So, something to be thinking about.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, all good stuff to look forward to. Hopefully, people will start using what sections are done
Yep.
and enjoying it, and maybe that'll help bring more impetus to the project too.
I hope so, I think so, but of immediate use, the pickleball courts are done, with the exception of some wind screening that didn't come in, but they're playable. So I see people playing and enjoying them down at
These are the courts that replace the tennis courts
at
at
Vets Field, the McKenna tennis courts. They will still be striped for tennis.
Yeah.
But they will be, I would say, for the most part, will probably be pickleball. It seems to be the
new
fastest,
thing.
growing sport in America, they say, so.
Well, and we still have tennis courts in Greenwood and on the west side.
And we have it at the high school,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So that's exciting too, and that whole Floral Way
yep.
project is really nice, and I think when some of those flowers are blooming and this fall, spectacular, so great
Excellent.
project. And better water quality going into the lake.
There you go.
Which was-
That's the
That was a
thing we
win-win.
really want
Yeah,
to see.
That was a win-win.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that does it for this month. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.